This podcast is brought to you by ProLongevity, the award-winning 8-week program that can transform the lives of people with pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and many other lifestyle-related illnesses. Founded by Graham Phillips, the pharmacist who gave up drugs.
So, I've got two more questions, really. The first of which is, if LDL isn't the cause, there's not a whole lot of point in measuring my LDL to know what my cardiovascular risk factors are. So, in the best of all possible worlds, what are the things we should be measuring that tell us we are at elevated risk or at reduced risk?
Well, getting into a bigger area, I think what I tend to say to people is that the factors that we've measured for the last 50 years are relatively unchanged, aren't they? If you went to a GP in 1970 and you went to a GP now, they'd be telling you exactly the same things, I think. Yeah. Slightly more emphasis on cholesterol than there was in those days. But the things that you need to look at. Now, you can't get most of these things done in the UK general practice or otherwise.
Yeah.
But you can measure central blood pressure, which is the more important blood pressure, the pressure at your heart rather than the pressure at your arm, which gives you a more accurate representation of what's actually going on. These monitors cost about £3,000, and I wouldn't advise buying one for yourself, but you could go to someone who can measure that.
Don't try this at home. Yeah.
Don't try this at home. The other thing that is coming in is you can measure. I know this is slightly top end stuff, but you can measure your actual the protective layer of your endothelium, the glycocalyx, by sticking a microscope under the tongue and seeing what's happening to your small blood vessels in your body. That is important. That again is not.
It looks under the tongue at the microvasculature.
Yes.
And that is a sufficient proxy to know what's going on. You can extrapolate that into other parts of the body.
Yeah, we can exactly extrapolate. It's actually used also to monitor sepsis. When you get bacterial infection, and you can see this lining being stripped off, and you measure it. You can tell virtually whether someone's going to live or die, depending on the amount of endothelial glycocalyx damage. So this is a new area, but it's very interesting. I would tend to measure what happens to your blood sugar levels after you eat. So I'd get some blood sugar monitoring done, because some people, whilst you don't have diabetes, your blood sugar level can be going up very high when you don't even know it. Yeah. So you can get these ambulatory monitoring kits now, and I think they are, if you like, a thing of the now that is going to become absolutely standard.
Yeah.
And when people are unaware of the fact that the blood sugar, when they measure it, might be okay, there's periods when it's going through the roof.
Yeah.
And if you can avoid that, then I think that's a very important thing to achieve. And there are more. Your general things like, yes, just get your general blood pressure checked. Yes, absolutely. If it's through the roof, have a look at it. Ask yourself why on earth it's going on. I'm tending to look beyond that. If you go to your GP, you'll get things done which are of some benefit. Apart from in GP land, they don't measure your LDL anyway.
Yeah.
They actually measure something else, which is your total cholesterol level divided by your good cholesterol level. And of course, why that's interesting is that's actually a measure of insulin resistance or diabetes.
HDL trigs.
It's worth measuring that, what they call dyslipidemia, definitely. So those things are valid to do. Your LDL won't be measured, so you don't need to worry about that. If you go to your GP, they'll do things like, family history and blah, 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 which are of some relevance to you, so that you can get a baseline from going, just your own doctor will be doing these things for you. You can go onto the internet, there's a thing called Q-Risk3, which is actually the tool that is used to measure and decide what is your cardiovascular risk. And it's okay insofar as it goes. But, I keep getting people writing to me saying, well, I have this and I have no problems I've had a heart attack and well, the other thing you can measure is the calcium score in your arteries in your heart.
I've just
show you.
One of the people who written favourable introductions to your book is a cardiologist called Scott Murray.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, I made the pilgrimage to see Scott.
Yeah.
And to have a coronary artery calcium, because my lipids are a bit wacky, right?
Yeah.
So I know, although I'm pretty careful and pretty healthy now, for many years I never exercised. I didn't sleep very well. I was highly stressed. I ate the wrong things. How much damage has been done? And according to Q-Risk-3, which is the NHS scale that you're talking about, my risk in the next 10 years of a heart attack is something over 10%.
Yeah.
And do not pass go, do not collect £200, go straight to your GP for a statin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I went to Scott, and lo and behold, to my delight and surprise, my coronary artery calcium is 3. And 3 is effectively 0.
Well, effectively zero. Yeah.
Right. So I've got no calcification of my arteries. And we should explain, the calcification doesn't kill you. What the calcification shows is that historical repair has been done.
Yes.
If there's no damage, there's no repair. So if there's been lots of damage, there'll be lots of repair. So the higher your calcification is, the more repair has been done over time, the more damage has been done over time. And this is a far, far higher and more accurate risk predictor than Q-Risk.
Yes.
And there's another risk predictor called MESA.
Yeah.
And so when we ran my score through MESA, it brings my score down from 10 point something percent to 4 point something percent, and no indication for a statin at all.
Well.
And the point about that for me is, if everyone, and the CAC score, it's not like it's a wild or wacky expensive test. It's actually a very easy test to do, and it's really cheap.
Yeah.
If it within the NHS, if GPs could, if GPs knew about the CAC score and had the ability to order a CAC score, then a very large number of people who've been completely overtreated with drugs that they don't need, which probably do more harm than good, wouldn't be. And a small number of people who really need a lot of treatment would free up the resources to really intervene in those people who really need it.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Well, I mean, I have had discussion with Scott and in fact Ivor Cummings in Ireland about the CAC score, and I've always been warning people about it, in that you have to know what it is that's going wrong, if you like. You also have to be able to do something about it.
correct.
And I said it is historical, and it would be nice to get something that will give you real-time information rather than historical information.
Sure.
But having said that, it's more accurate than, yeah, as you say, if you have 0 score, it doesn't matter what you've been doing, it ain't been doing you any harm.
Yeah.
And if you think you've been doing everything right, your score is through the roof, then you have to ask yourself, what am I not actually picking up here? What could I be doing that I'm not?
Yeah.
And I think that's it, as you say, as you rightly say, that's important in and of itself. It helps to move people more accurately towards doing things correct. Yeah, absolutely. Because if your repair system is fantastic, you can probably get away with stuff. Or equally, there may be things going on that you just no idea about, that are sitting there in the background. You may have a blood clotting problem that you didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
And in fact, the only time sometimes people know they've got one is when they have a heart attack, and then no one knows why. So it's individualization is good, but if you say, in your case, your CAC score is 3, you can almost say, whoopee, carry on. If your CAC score is 3,000, you go, okay.
I need to do something.
Things have been going wrong for years. Yeah, so it's important, I think.
I kind of diverted a bit when you got to CAC, because it's a personal hobby horse of mine.
No, it's well, there's so many. I find out I have to be very careful. I can go rushing down areas of minute concerns of the population and get all excited about them. And did you realize that homocysteine and blah blah blah? These things are there because they are very interesting. I went off down the sickle cell disease route at one time, which affects virtually no one in this country, but is enormously important if you've got it for causing cardiovascular disease. It increases your risk by, in one study, 50,000%. And when I see a figure like that, I get all excited and go, "Oh, what's going on here?" So you have to try and bring it back to what is helpful for people as well. It's all very well theory and whatever. I like to think I pointed out to people from, if you like reading this, at least hopefully you can go away and have a much better idea about stuff you should be looking at, the stuff you should be concerned about, that no one is really telling people about, which is the worrying thing, isn't it? Statins, all bloody. all the bloody way, this is
And now
not a way to.
PCSK9 inhibitors. Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, yeah. Well, the latest one, PCSK9. Don't ask me what it stands for. I know what it does, but I can never remember. Polycrenylate something. Anyway, that's the thing that breaks down the LDL receptor once it's taken in the LDL is a PCSK9 enzyme.
Yeah.
If you block that enzyme, then the receptor is then free to go back to the surface of the cell and bring more LDL in. So it kind of brings LDL in at a much higher rate, so the level in your blood drops. To which I used to have said to people, well, the cholesterol is bad for you. Why would you want your cells to be getting filled up with cholesterol? Surely this would be a bad thing. But of course, logic has gone from this world, but there we are. PCSK9 inhibitors will be found to have the results on them are that they did nothing for cardiovascular disease, death.
Or death.
But it's slightly increased death, which is probably not what you want from a drug, is it? I mean, not hugely, but I mean,
it does little or nothing for your cardiovascular risk, but makes you more likely to die.
Yeah, it's well done.
No, that does it for me. I have plenty.
And it's only £9,000 a year, so you can bankrupt the NHS while you're at it. These things are just ridiculous.
I know. Backing up a bit though, so are there? I kind of interrupt you a bit with my enthusiasm about.
No, it was a good time.
But in terms of risk factors you should consider, are there any major ones that we didn't? I mean, you can go on and on and on, but there's the kind of Pareto principle. Do you think we've covered the Pareto principle of risk management, risk consideration?
I think to me, the whole exercise is good. Put it that way. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
Relaxation is good, which is kind of the stress thing. Not smoking, we know that. I think air pollution is an unconsidered thing, which a lot of people haven't looked at, and I think that is still quite an important one. If you are in a really polluted, smoky microparticle environment, I think you do need to look at that. I mean, I hate the idea of everyone wearing masks, but if you're walking around the centre of London and getting exhaust fumes blown on you day in and day out, this is a problem. It does cause heart disease, and for quite a lot of people, and also the other chemicals that you breathe in with the pollution,
particularly the diesel particulates,
diesel particulates, nanoparticles, but also, I mean, it was interesting that before they took lead out of car exhausts, you remember there was about 200,000 tons was blown into the air every year in America, and the last time I looked, and this is published in the Lancet, they still believe that 250,000 cardiovascular deaths a year are caused by historical lead pollution. So these things are important. Now, you can measure the lead in your blood if you want, and there are. I mean, this is a fun one. I didn't really cover it in the book, or did I? I can't remember whether I left it in or took it out now. But if you have a high lead level, it is actually possible to remove toxic metals from your blood using a thing called chelation therapy, which I always used to think was just nonsense. I thought this is like super nonsense.
Chelation is good science.
Yes, it is good science. And as it turns out that they tried to do a study to prove that it wouldn't work, and then they found that it did, which is always the best sort of study. And they did it in the States, and everyone was like jumping up and down, going, "This is a terrible study. It should never have been done." In fact, people tried to stop it being done. They actually deliberately tried to prevent it from being done. And then when it was done, it was positive. And now they're doing another follow-up one. But heavy metals or toxins in your bloodstream, well, of course, they're doing the same thing as smoking or whatever. They're damaging your endothelial cells. And we know that they do this, and they increase the chance of blood clotting. So if you have these things, less people have them now. We're in a less polluted environment. But it may still be worth for people who are in their sort of 60s and 70s thinking about it and saying, is it worth getting it checked? Because there is a form of treatment that has been proven to work. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that's a big one for a lot of people, but if it's still causing 250,000 deaths a year in the States, that's more than like COVID, and nobody gives a stuff about it.
That's an eyelid, I know. So which brings me to my final question, Malcolm, which is, we've talked about how you will know your risk. I think the final bit of the jigsaw for me is risk mitigation strategies. So whether or not you know your risk, and whether you go to your GP and have all the tests done or not, all of us, I think, would like to reduce our cardiovascular risk. So what are Kendrick's top tips for cardiovascular risk reduction?
Well, when I did write this in the book, I can't remember what I wrote now. So
I can probably help you out if you get stuck.
all right. Well, yeah, we've probably got very similar ones. I mean, I think it's like living the healthy lifestyle. We haven't really kicked on diet, but I mean, I think that if you've got problems with blood sugar levels being high, is to reduce the carbohydrates in your diet, because that really causes problems, and it stimulates all sorts of nasty downstream things. And some people can cope or appear to be able to cope with carbohydrate out of carbohydrate without any problem, but there's a high proportion of people who have a problem. And if you have a problem, like you're putting on weight, you're putting on central fat, if you like, central obesity, if this is happening to you, or you run a blood test and find that your blood sugar is not necessarily high enough to say you've got diabetes, but it's raised, I think you need to cut down on the carbohydrates. You just absolutely have to. And it's sad to say that also don't drink alcohol late at night, because then your body can't use up the other systems properly. So you're left in this constantly kind of high carbohydrate using system. And this runs into problems. So that's a dietary issue, not for everybody. And also the other thing we looked at was high intensity exercise. Short burst high intensity exercise is good for that, whereas actually long runs and whatever are much less good for this, because your body goes into a completely different metabolic system. So high intensity exercise, cutting down the carbohydrates, very effective at reducing your risk due to this raised blood sugar issue, which on a population basis is probably the biggest risk that we've got. I think, because also if you are stressed, if you're under chronic stress, you will get the same kind of problems with your carbohydrate metabolism. So you've got to lower this thing down. So, if you are in a stressful job, meditate. If you aren't exercising, exercise. If you are eating too many carbohydrates, don't, start eating them. Avoid smoking, clearly and obviously. Avoid highly polluted and toxic environments. And again, obviously, if your blood pressure is high, then another thing that you can try is actually potassium consumption. If you increase that, that will likely lower your blood pressure. And also, potassium lowers down some quite damaging systems that are designed to keep your blood pressure up that damage blood vessels. So potassium intake is quite important on this one. I also recommend vitamin D during the winter time, because vitamin D has a million effects, but cardiovascular prevention effects. And I also advise just clunking about 1 gram of vitamin C a day, because that has quite important cardiovascular protection effects as well. And then when you go beyond these things, you're looking at slightly more specific issues.
Cover the vitamin C briefly, because you do that in the book rather well. And we can't make our own vitamin C.
No.
Whereas many mammals can. And it has a huge role in cardiovascular epithelial integrity, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, for some reason, 40 million years ago, at least probably something about this size as a shrew, lost the ability to make vitamin C, and we no longer can. Now, that is not a problem most of the time for most people, I suppose. And in the past, there was plenty of vitamin C in the diet. But if you don't synthesize vitamin C and you get low in vitamin C is critical for the production of collagen, which is a support protein in all your body and in your blood vessels. So your blood vessels can crack. When they crack, obviously, that causes blood clots to form on them, and specifically that can cause atherosclerosis if you're not careful. And people who have a high level of a particular lipoprotein A, which is never normally measured,
LP little a,
LP little a, which is actually LDL with an extra protein attached. This sticks to the area of damage very tightly. It's a kind of like a plug, which is designed to keep you alive if your vitamin C levels drop. And animals that don't have vitamin C synthesis have LPA, and we have LPA. And if the level in your blood is high, then if you get a crack in your blood vessel caused by anything, or the other things I talked about causing endothelial damage, the clot that is formed becomes much more difficult to be got rid of for all sorts of reasons. And therefore, I would advise the vitamin C as make sure there's nothing causing your blood vessels to crack.
And it's cheap and it's universally available, so
It's
nothing to lose.
cheap as chips, isn't it? I mean, I take it as a powder,
Yeah,
which is horrible, but apparently that's the best way to do it. It tastes, ugh, but
more
if you
absorbable.
stir it up, and drink it quickly, it works all right. And what harm can it do? And particularly if people get infections like viral infections, or even with COVID, I advise people get your vitamin C up,
Yeah,
because COVID is ripping your endothelial cells, and causing blood clotting if you're not careful. But vitamin C, vitamin C is used by cells to protect themselves when they're under assault, so it keeps them healthy. And animals that are infected raise their vitamin C production hugely to like 20 grams a day or whatever.
and we can't.
We can't do that. So, but there's a very important one, I think, and there's been some quite important research, and there's a lot of people who believe that we should be giving vitamin C in high quantities to people who are seriously ill with COVID in hospital. The Chinese were doing it. There's a few cardiologists in the UK that are now trying to convince everyone to do it. I can't see why you wouldn't do this. But so there's that. That's the thing when you're otherwise unwell, is when you need vitamin C. You may not need it other times. It's got rid of fairly quickly. But if you're feeling a bit unwell, whack it in there as much as you can tolerate. And sort of typically, of course, it was when they tried to research vitamin C, by Linus Pauling was a big vitamin C promoter, and he said, well, if you take 10 grams a day, you'll never get anything, which I'm not entirely sure about. But anyway, so they said, we'll do some research, and they gave people something like 100 milligrams, and said, we haven't.
Give them a homeopathic dose. Don't find any benefits in this result. Yeah. Same with vitamin D. Yeah.
Oh well, Linus Pauling was wrong. I said, well, he was telling you to take 10 grams, and you took 1/100 of that, and now you're saying it doesn't work. Anyway, that, as you know, that the research into vitamins is particularly flawed. I didn't use the word corrupt, but I might do if somebody booked me. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Are there any fundamental or preventive strategies? Or do you think we've? For me, sleep is the other big.
Well, yeah, you'd be along with Phil. Haven't done that one.
I'm not being rude. This is just my new toy, my Aura Ring.
Well, I think we don't get enough sleep, and if you don't get sleep, your neurohormonal system, your stress system, gets kicked all around the place. And it's interesting. You watch that people who work shift work are much more likely to get heart disease and cancer, and all sorts of really horrible things. We really need to sleep, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and we need good quality sleep if we can get it, and that's really important. Yeah, no, I mean it is something that's under sort of appreciated. I think I haven't talked about it much in the book, but you run out of things after a while. You think, well, I don't want to tell people to do it. They'll just say, well, I can't do all of that. It's impossible.
So look, all we've done is scratch the surface. That's probably an appropriate way to put it.
Scratch the end of the. We've merely scratched the end.
Yeah. So once again, Malcolm, where can people get the book? What are the plans for the book?
If they could go, I prefer if they can go to my blog, which is drmalcolmkendrick.org, where you can link into it and order it from there, or from the publishers, the Columbus Publishing. Now, the reason for this is that there's a certain large company that sounds like a big river in South America that takes. Is that
the one that the LDL molecules have to go from one side and come? Your book has to pop out the other side of the and the Amazon jungle. Yeah,
has been removed by the large river in South America. So so I kind of don't like that very much. So they can get it from there. You can get it from obviously the large river in South America as a Kindle version as well. Some people have talked about an audio book, which I haven't done yet because there's diagrams in it, and I can't quite see how you can describe a diagram, because they won't let you describe diagrams in the Audible books. You just have to read the words.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because I have to describe the bloody diagram.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anyway. But anyway, that's if people want to go to the blog drmalcolmkendrick.org.
And your blog is wonderful. It really is. It's absolute mine of information. The other point I haven't made is the way that you talk is the way that you write. I love your writing style because it's All the science is there, but it's done in your kind of laconic, slightly offbeat, way with your particular sense of humour, and that comes across in the book, and it makes what could be an incredibly technical and dull subject actually really engaging.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I try to. I know that myself. A bit of a wise man once said that humor is just a funny way of being serious, but it also makes it more readable. I think. I hope.
It is.
I mean, some people hate it because they say you're talking about a serious subject. How can you possibly write a joke? It's like.
Well, it worked for me.
Well, yeah. Well, I think one thing I have learned: you can't please everybody all the time.
Yeah.
Rule number one. But if enough people think it's at least you're going to get an occasional laugh, then
no, it is. It produced lots of wry smiles along the way, and the occasional guffaw, I must say. So,
yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you, or that you feel that we should, as we close, that we should cover?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think that hopefully it's given people a kind of overview of what I'm talking about. I think it's covered it pretty well. It's always quite hard to describe this because without going off down various alleyways that I'm interested in, but I realise that nobody's very interested in it. I mean, I am an uber geek. In fact, I can't help it. And then people can read and I hope get an idea. It's not rocket science in a way. It's sort of almost like saying to people, live life like people used to live 1,000 years ago or something, or not quite, obviously, but if you know what I mean. This is not just saying to people we've created a lifestyle for ourselves that is relatively toxic in many different ways, and we have to try and remember what were we designed to do, how were we designed to live, how should we be living. We should be exercising life.
Eat a species appropriate diet, leave appropriate species appropriate lifestyle, and let evolution do the rest for you. I mean, I think the book is actually immensely reassuring. It's not a scary book. It's a very reassuring one.
Well, I think I'm hoping it is. And says people, it's quite simple. It's in your control, but stay away from. I think I say I'm a doctor. Stay away from all these medications. Some people need some medications, obviously, but I think it's just gone. It's gone bonkers, especially in these areas, because raised cholesterol level, raised bad cholesterol level, raised blood sugar level, raised blood pressure. These are the three biggies for the industry, because they know that once they've got you on a drug for this is going to be for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You get an antibiotic, that's 1 week once. They don't make much money out of that. You're on a cholesterol lowering drug, then that is forever. And therefore the profits that can be made in these areas are astronomical. And I think that's distorted things really, really badly.
I say this a lot. I call myself the pharmacist that gave up drugs, and I very much feel that we're up against these two huge paradigms of big food on the one hand and big pharma on the other. Actually, that would be a lovely segue, actually, Malcolm. So if you will indulge me with a second mystery guest appearance when we could talk about doctoring data and the way all of this stuff is spun to our disadvantage, I'd love to have you back to discuss it.
Well, no, that would be fine. I think I'll have to sort of regain some energy levels. But no, I think people, it's just education. Hopefully, people find it interesting at the same time. They think, oh gosh, that's interesting and whatever. And
it is. And
that's the ideal thing, isn't it? But I think people are not equipped nowadays to deal with the information that comes at them without, they're just bombarded, and it's just too much. And just trying to get some critical analysis, I think it is important. So hopefully that would be good.
It's been wonderful for me, and as I say, I think I've finally understood it because of the way that you explained it to me. I can never totally understand this whole way that I knew that the saturated fat was a load of rubbish, but I'd kind of swallowed the LDL story, but it never really, gelled. And now I know why it gelled. That didn't gel because actually it was wrong.
Yeah.
Now you've provided me with a cogent and convincing argument. So you've been really generous with your time. Really appreciate your book. We'll put all the relevant links in the show notes. And once again, thanks for coming on, and see you soon.
Well, I enjoyed the chat. Thanks very much. You kept me on track.
Cheers.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed the podcast and want to find out more, join our Wellness and Pro Longevity Facebook group. Don't forget to subscribe and follow so you never miss an episode, and maybe share to friends and family who might benefit. Finally, if you think you might need help with diabetes, heart disease, or any of the other diseases we discuss, then book a free consultation with Graham. There's absolutely no charge for this, and we would never put you under any pressure. What do you have to lose? Bye for now, and see you for the next episode.